players just like they do now. Very good defensive line. They were good defense that year. I think again, if you want to win at the end of the year, and now for us it's a 4-game playoff. For some teams it was a 3. But if you want to win at that time of the season, you can't do that if you're not winning up front. So Ohio State's winning up front. That's why they're winning, and I think it's the same for us. So we need to play really good football against a really good group.
After the Clemson game, Sark was talking about how you like to rush train your offensive linemen, which has obviously been key with so many injuries this year. Is it as simple as the guys are just playing different positions in practice, or how do you do that?
Is it as simple as that? To some degree, it is. You have to, but I think the key is to find the right times to get them the reps and make sure, like, so for somebody like Hayden Connor, he's our starting left guard. So I got to make sure, first and foremost, he gets enough reps there to play really well. And then how much does he really need so that if he goes in at center, which may or may not happen, but he needs to be ready if it does happen, that he will be ready. So we did some stuff in the offseason. Like, so I took a week in the spring, and Hayden just played center. And then I took a week in training camp. Training camp's 4 weeks. I took 1 week, and he just played center. So I think that gave him a really good baseline for how to do it. With a guy like Trevor Gooseby, it's really just a matter of just keep flipping him left and right and giving him opportunities to do it.
How hard is that for them to just remember to play this position now? These are
I don't think it's that. Well, I don't think knowing which position they're at is very hard. I think getting comfortable with the techniques, whether you're playing left side or right side, that takes a little bit of time. So you wouldn't want to just do it. You'd want to give the guy enough practice reps that they could be comfortable doing both.
Coach, your team played pretty well blocking for your quarterback, except a couple of games against Georgia. What were some of those things that Georgia did that you're hoping doesn't happen in this game?
Again, I don't look at it like that, and I'm not trying to. The question's a fair question. I understand why you would ask that, but I don't see the game that way. To me, it's okay. What does Ohio State do? And how can we be really effective against them? Because they've got different players. They've got a different scheme. So no different than, Coach Knowles isn't going to look at what Coach Smart did and say, all right, we're going to change our defense so we can do what they did because they played well against Texas. That's not really how it works. He's got a really good defense that he believes in. So for us, it's going to be a matter of, hey, we got to make sure we're ready for what they do. When they run their third down blitzes, we got to make sure that we ID them correctly, that we switch the games. They do a great job with their pick stunts, with their line stunts. Those are all things that are going to present challenges in this game for us.
How much that is in behind, when you put Cole in, when you put DJ in, timing, that type of thing? Because it seems like he was on the field late against Arizona State, and it's just a strange time to make that switch. So what's kind of
if I told you, I'd have to kill you. No, I'm only kidding. No, somebody asked me this a couple minutes ago. No, it's really more of a feel thing for me, and the important thing for me is that they're both in the rhythm of the game. So I generally try to make sure Cole gets in the first half. Excuse me, so that he's ready to go at whatever point or however that combination of guys end up playing. And Cole ended up playing through the fourth quarter, and then DJ came back in overtime and played the overtime. So it's really more of a feel thing for me. But the important thing for me is that they're both in the flow of the game, so that if something happens in the middle, they're both ready to play.
Coach, how far did you able to maybe identify what's happened to this offense in the third quarter over the past few games? It's just that quarter just seems to be uncharacteristics about the other quarters that you guys play.
Ultimately, it's about execution. It's not about what quarter it happens in. For us, I don't think it's like. To me, it's not something that we're overly focused on. From hey, we need to make sure that we get the third quarter right. Like that's. I don't know if the players look at it like that. We make adjustments at halftime like everybody makes adjustments at halftime. And we want to play really well when we come out for the second half. But it's really more about attacking the details of the plays that gets called, not thinking of it as the third quarter. We're not thinking of it as the third quarter. We really need to be thinking of it as, all right, here's the first play of the second half. Let's make sure we execute this play. Here's what they did in the first half. Here's our adjustments. Let's make sure we execute that play, and then continuing that through the third quarter.
Because they're scoring so many points, do you look at games like this and say, well, it's not really a field goal game, that we're going to score X number of points? Do you approach it like that a little bit?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think every game kind of takes on a life of itself. And, we've played some games that have been high scoring, and, and they've had a couple too that have been like that, and some others that haven't been, maybe low-scoring games. Those are decisions that Sark makes kind of in the flow of the game. We don't go into it saying it's going to be any kind of game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coach, how far back do you look at a team like in this moment, like Ohio State? Because they had kind of a renaissance defensively after the first Oregon game. So what do you see that's maybe different from earlier in the year? Or maybe you don't look like that far, but what do you see that stands out about them at this point defensively?
No, we look at all the games. I think what the things that stand out to me is how much of a veteran team they have first and foremost, and then second of all, how physical they are in their front seven. They've got fourth and fifth year players up front that are really, really good players, high level players, guys that are going to play in the NFL. They got a middle linebacker who's as good as anybody we've faced this year, a kid from St. Peter's in New Jersey, who I'm pretty familiar with that school. I've had a couple good players myself from that school. So, that's what jumps out. And obviously Coach Knowles does a great job. They tackle really well. They do the fundamentals really well. So we got to make sure we do the fundamentals really well.
Is there something that sticks out about a Jim Knowles defense? You understand what I'm saying? I would think you even look into that, right?
Yeah, physicality and aggressiveness. That's what I think that's, again, I don't know how he would say it, but that's what it looks like to me on film for sure.
And going back to that linebacker, Cody Simon, number 0, what jumps out about the way he plays?
Well, he's relentless to the ball, and when he gets a chance to get you on the ground, he gets you on the ground. Yeah, he doesn't miss very many tackles.
Coach, as an offensive coordinator, I do have to ask you, Bert Auburn has struggled, obviously, over the last several weeks. How do you guys approach that, and as far as him, and does that affect you guys from play calling as far as those decisions to go for field goals?
I think, that's really Sark's decision. As the head coach, he's got to make those decisions. Third to fourth down, those are decisions that only a head coach can make. It doesn't affect how we game plan. It doesn't affect how we feel. We've got a lot of confidence in Bert. Bert's also made a lot of kicks in his career for us too. So, again, we would like to have made those last week. We didn't make them. This is a new week. So, I know his focus has been on getting better. But, again, ultimately the decisions about, do you go for it, do you not go for it, those are always head coach's decisions. And, again, a little bit of that is the flow of the game.
When does he communicate that to you? Does he, at the start of the drive, sometimes tell you, hey, you got 4 downs to work with if we get past X yard line, or is that you've got 4 downs to work with all game, and how does that change your sort of decision making?
I think as a staff we have a pretty good idea of the parts of the field where we're going to do those things, but he certainly has the liberty to interject and do it anytime he wants as the head coach.
What kind of growth have you seen out of Caleb Downs, especially the last couple of games out of him?
Yeah, it's really unique how they use him. They put him in a lot of different positions, whether it's at safety, whether it's at nickel, they put him in the box. He's a very, very versatile player, excellent coverage player, and again, an excellent tackler. They have certain things they do on defense to try to funnel the ball to him as the primary tackler. So he's impressive in terms of how many different ways they use him and how he's able to excel at all of them.
What is something you're most proud of with this offensive line group?
Well, I will tell you, I'm proud of the connection that they have to each other. I think if you had all these guys sitting at a table and you had a chance to be with all of them at the same time, you'd see them kidding each other, joking around with each other. They really enjoy being around each other, and that's unique. I've had a couple groups like that in my career. This is certainly one of them. Not really. We have an idea of what they like and what they don't like, but I will say, Coach Sark and I have been together for 8 years now, and just about every year, if you looked at our run game, a different part of it has been emphasized. Whether it's the pin pull or the gap schemes. The gap schemes with pullers, the gap schemes with out pullers, inside zone, outside zone. You really could look at all these different years and say, oh, wow, this year they emphasized this a little more, this year but we never go into a game with having all of them available to us. So the backs need to be able to do them all, and they can, and that's really important to us. I love the fact that they have an opinion, that they like one over the other, and that's great. But for us, ultimately, we got to make sure that the game plan is built around marrying those plays with the play actions, with the dropbacks, with the screen, with all the other things we're trying to do. So, again, I think our offense has always been very multiple in the run game, and this year the outside zone's maybe been a little more emphasized than previous years, and we're excited about that. But ultimately, as we go into the game, we're always going to have everything accessible to us.
You have experience coaching Coach Knowles back in years at Ohio State. Is that helping you a little bit with hearing and seeing Stevens before, or is it kind of a different animal because of different players, different times that East Coast has to Ohio State?
No, I think if you coach for 30 years, you're going to have a little bit of familiarity with some people. And Coach Knowles and I have been doing this for a little bit. But what he's doing now is not identical to what he did at Oklahoma State. He's got different players, and the strengths of this defense are a little different than the strengths maybe of his defense at Oklahoma State. Now, both defenses played really good defense. So that's the similarity. But all of the schemes, there's some carryover, but there's not like complete carryover. It's not like, okay, this is exactly what they did. They're doing it still. It's a little bit different.
You want a game like this too? I'm sure you do. He's got to have something for you. You're
Sure.
telling me this a little
Yeah,
bit different.
in every game, there's unscouted looks that you have to be able to handle, and that's where I really lean on a guy like Jake Majors. That's really like, for us, he can solve those problems in real time. And I always tell him, I was like, one of the things about playing center is you can't be afraid to make decisions. You have to make decisions, and he loves that. And he'll make decisions, and if it's something that we hadn't really talked about, he'll come to the sideline immediately and be like, all right, hey, coach, this is what I saw, this is what I did. What do you think? And now, in the past, it was like, okay, let's draw it up. Now we have the iPad. Now we actually see it. Say, okay, all right, I get it. I understand why you did that. Okay, let's do that again if that happens. Or it's like, okay, I understand why you did it, but next time you see that, I want you to see it this way. Let's do it differently. Yeah. And he can do that. So I think there's a lot of value in a game like this to having a guy with experience. And then, again, a guy like Hayden Connor as the backup center, he gives me a little bit of that too because he's played a lot of football here.
Immediately taking the field. Hey, one last thing. Caleb Downs, number 2. Does he, as I've told him before, I call you one of those last frame guys. He goes, where you mean I go? No matter what video you watch a video play, he's almost always in the last frame.
Oh, yeah.
If he's not there already. What jumps out at you about him?
The different ways they use him. They play him at safety, they play him at nickel, they play him in the box, where they try to funnel the ball to him. So I think they do a really good job. They move him around, and again, between 2 and 0, those two guys, they get everybody on the ground. So they do a really nice job with their schemes of trying to make sure the ball goes to those players, because when it does, they generally get them on the ground.
Thank you.